I want to talk about early reading, which is also a very strong interest that young children have. One of the things that I always loved about following Montessori's methods, whether I was teaching in a Montessori classroom or working in a public school setting, was that I could experience some of the same things she did, Montessori did over a century ago. I could discover or rediscover, if you will, some of the same characteristics that we've been talking about, some of the same needs and intense interests that Montessori witnessed. Montessori discovered that the best time to teach writing and reading was between the ages of 3.5 and 5.5, when they're experiencing very specific periods of intense interest, as we've mentioned, in elements of their environment. Montessori referred to these periods of intense interest as sensitive periods of development. She also called them psychic passions. She saw a passion in the child and wanting to do this. I'm looking at the picture on the screen now, and I just want to say that that is not a staged photo. This is really a little 3-year-old who's sounding out his words and very, very interested in making sense of that. But in this instance, we are talking about a strong and sometimes all-encompassing interest in reading. Marilyn spoke about the children's intense interest and in capacity for learning how to write. This same eagerness and joy is repeated in these very young children, as these very young children begin to see how the writing and word building that they are engaged in is how we transmit human thought. It's how we communicate with one another. Montessori had an amazing experience with children at one point, children who had been deeply engaged in forming letters, writing words. She began to write little messages on the blackboard for them. If you love me, give me a kiss. If you can read this, come to me. This happened for a few days, but the children paid little attention. They just assumed that Montessori was writing for her own amusement. But then on the 4th day, a little girl responded to one of the messages and came up to Montessori and said, "Here I am." Later, another child came up to give Montessori a kiss. And of course, then the secret was out. And all the children were thrilled to death to carry out command after command that Montessori wrote on the chalkboard. Well, in my own way, and I think Marilyn, you'd agree that we've experienced the same phenomenon, children who exhibit an intense interest in writing. Unfortunately, English is not nearly as phonetic a language as the Italian that Montessori spoke and the Italian that she taught to her little ones. So the climb is a bit steeper, I think, in our English-speaking classrooms, but the interest and abilities of today's children are no less amazing. What we've found and what every Montessori classroom sees is that as soon as young children learn the alphabetic code, the alphabetic principle, which is that they understand that letters represent speech sounds and that printed letters can be turned into speech, they quickly and effortlessly learn the alphabet letter sounds and learn how to encode or write words, as you were mentioning. But as soon as they begin to master the basics of written language, they are so very ready to be introduced to reading. And so we introduce reading in our classrooms with a very fun lesson, very similar to the blackboard exercise that Montessori conducted. And the fire for reading is ignited in these young children, and off to the races we go. We've always advocated early reading for kindergarten and preschool children for a long time, not just because early childhood students are generally very ready to learn to read and absolutely love it, but also because the sensitive period for reading and writing that they experience during these early years and the nature of the absorbent mind that they have during these early years allows them to learn this stuff very, very easily.
And you know, if we wait till the reasoning mind kicks in at, say, 6 or 7, yeah, they can learn to read, but they have to do it by memorizing and study, whereas if they're in the absorbent mind, they just do it almost spontaneously.
Montessori gave us the notion that young children can learn to read and write, and that was so revolutionary in 1907. It's not so revolutionary now. Children in public schools are expected to learn to read and write before they go to 1st grade. Well, Montessori schools have been doing this for a long, long time, using a systematic, multisensory, hands-on approach that allows a child to choose his own work and repeat to his heart's content and progress according to his own ability and interest. And I could go on and on about reading because it's a special passion of mine, but that's a story for another day.